Hi, here we are now in Sociology 2, Part 2 on aging. Now here in Part 2, we're going to look at the theoretical view of aging in society. And we're also going to look at living arrangements for older adults, and finally we're going to touch on death and dying in our society. So let's get right into this. We're going to begin with theories. Now, sociologists have been moving from a micro-level view, that is, how do we individually adapt to the changes in the social roles that were available to us, or that we personally engage in on a macro level. So instead of just looking at things just as how do you deal with these issues, to more of a macro, which is looking at the societal level and age stratification. So the dividing of a population into categories, we view the experiences within life categories. So instead of looking at individuals, we look at how do the people in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, for example. So we include in these categories the including of the inequities, the differences in of segregation, or in the conflicts that occur between age groups. So the study is moving from individual to larger global views of aging in society. And we're going to begin with functionalists. Now, functionalists focus on the older persons and how they adjust to their changing role in society. Now, as you get older, you've had certain roles, parent, dad, employee, CEO, you've had these roles that have been important, identity roles. When someone asks you, what do you do, or who are you, you identify with certain things, and those things are right up here as top identifiers of who you are. But when you get to a certain age, they don't become the strong identifiers anymore. And so we have to adapt to these changes from needing to work and being functional members of society to less important and less valuable to society. We become dysfunctional. Now, according to the disengagement theory, healthy adjustment means detaching from social roles, holding jobs, contributing to the growth of society and things, and preparing for death. This is functional. So it's functional to disengage. As older workers move out of employment and into retirement, younger workers can move in with new ideas and continue the economy and societal growth. Now, there are critics to this theory that sort of say, well, not everyone wants to disengage, and many are still vibrant and needed. Retirement may hurt some older employees as well as some organizations. Now, there's another functionalist theory. It's called aging and society paradigm. Now, rather than a fixed view of the expectation of old age, this theory suggests that the older citizens citizens can and do contribute to society, and that how and what it will old age be will be evolving with each cohort moves through life, their life exposed to different opportunities, limitations, and socialization. So how I'm going through and approaching and going through old age may in fact be very different than those of you in your 20s. Because your life experience, the way that you've been socialized, and what opportunities that you have, and the limitations that are confronting you will be different than the ones that confronted me. So by the time you get to be 60 and moving towards your retirement, your experience will be different. And that's part of what this theory is talking about. How people were raised during World War I or World War II, through the 60s, or even in the 90s, all have had different experiences and have had and will have different old age experiences. Now, you'll have the benefit, if you will, of the experience of the boomers and baby boomers, and what impact that'll have will impact those following. Okay, on the flip side, let's look at the Symbolic Interactionists. Now remember, Symbolic Interactionists are the only theory group that we look at that is still a micro level. So that their focus is on individual adjustment. Their examination is on how you and I, we are the individuals, experience aging. Not everyone has the same experience. It's kind of like we're on a continuum. Symbolic interactionalists have what's called activity theory. This theory identifies successful aging with shifting gears in the late middle age, finding substitutes of previous statuses, roles, and activities. It could be putting much. You could be putting much time into being a grandparent, traveling, hobbies, volunteering, and continuing working. Older people tend to be happiest if they adapt or change to and within these changes, life changes, rather than resisting the change or not adapting. And so that's one of the big components of activity theory here, is that the more we have things to do, activities, the more engaged we can be, the more we adjust to our old age, and the healthier we can actually be. The more we resist that change, I'm not ready to retire, I've got more to contribute, and I have nothing ahead of me, I don't want to go there. That person might find old age less, and might age less successfully. Symbolic interactionalists also consider the available roles of older people, or what within a particular ethnic group of people of older age can be accepted or respected for. So different groups have different expectations and different roles for older people. Now, if we're going to look at conflict, tying economics to successful aging, conflict analysis draws attention. Conflict analysis draws attention to the diversity of older populations and focuses on how capitalism devalues older people, especially women. If a person has been disadvantaged in their younger years, it's likely to hold true as they enter into late adulthood. According to conflict theorists, not only are women disadvantaged, but so too are members of racial and minority groups. Now, one of their theories is cumulative advantage theory, and it posits that the advantages and disadvantages of one gender, race, class accumulation over the course of a life has a major impact on aging. These advantages and disadvantages can carry over through generations, affecting one's children and grandchildren. So if in my lifetime I accumulate a certain amount of resources, success, I can pass that on to my children, and they can use that and gain more and pass that on. But so it's true of disadvantages, that if I don't gain a lot of advantages, I struggle through my life, I may in fact pass that on to my children, and they too may struggle. This idea is picked up a little bit more and expanded on with the feminist scholars. Now, they focus on the gender-based inequalities that impact older women. Now, this can be impacted by women not having a long time in the workforce because they were bearing and raising children, having a shorter career or only part-time work, limited or no work pension. The result of this, the result is less to live on as they grow older. This may be improving today because we see more women carrying on full-time jobs, and we're delaying having children. As more women are working full-time, they have their own pension plans and may in fact retire better shape than they would have done in the past. Now, moving on to the postmodern theory, the central theme in postmodern theory is that the notion that that identity is a social construct. Okay, a social construct. This implies that we can alter the way the culture thinks about aging, also known as a cultural narrative. We and the way we experience life stages will define our life stages. Rather than static age-related stages, we, you and I, or our age group, the media, can and do what we what is desired and therefore expected, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We can alter what does old age look like for us. You in the younger years will alter what is in it for you. So rather than static age-related stages, it's more dynamic. We see older people in old age homes, and we can see them doing much more. My dad is now 85, and he went skiing, downhill skiing at Mount Tremblant until he was 82. I can remember days back when I was younger looking at somebody in their 80s. There's no way I could imagine them skiing. In fact, they weren't looking after themselves in the same way as they are today. Excuse me. Now, it's interesting to watch what roles will older people play in what options will there be for aging. Some new terms are starting to take a hold. Age in place, assisted dying. Older people want to have more control over their lives and their deaths. And the question then can be, is this redefining the social construct of what elderly identity means? So let's start touching base here on living arrangements for older adults. Now, while only a small percentage of older persons live in nursing homes or other special care facilities, support services, homemaker services, daycare options, that's not daycare like children, it's day options for doing things, but it's called daycare options, are in the increasing demand by an aging population. For a financially overburdened healthcare system, these options can also prove to be the most cost-efficient solution. Cultural norms of different ethnic groups influence families' choices for elder care. In most informal options, it's the women who provide much of the support. Now, support services, family is often the most popular and most frequent informal support for the elderly. With the declining family size, however, few people to help and support services are needed. Now, this can include home care services, daycare, activity-based, and less costly than the institutional care. Now, nursing homes, any non-hospital that provides medical care to the chronically ill and elderly. Now, these need to be cognitive and physical issues that the elderly are dealing with that interfere with them being able to care for themselves. As much as these homes can be very helpful, they too can lower one's well-being, exposes people to exposes people to accelerated illness, neglect, abuse, accelerated mortality. There is much study on how to improve the support and more natural living environment and lower wait times. This includes the better support for workers, the better support for old age people. Check the same experiences in your textbook. You'll find them on page 174-75. You may have read some of the reports as well as these issues in nursing homes and how, as a society, we will adapt to a growing number of older citizens. Now, lastly, both figuratively and literally, we're going to touch on death and dying. Now, where historically death has been common occurrence in all stages of life course, in contemporary industrial societies, the association of death with aging process has contributed to ageism. The legal and medical battles about when to die, how to die, and who decides. Additionally, removed from everyday life to institutions, death itself has become removed from the natural to the unnatural. Just as coping with death has become a communal and social event than it has an individual experience. I'd encourage you to read a little bit about Sue Rodriguez, that's in your textbook there on page 175-76, and the Supreme Court rulings as a result of her circumstance. As was mentioned in the postmodern theory, we influence our reality and the social construct. Many older adults want to say in the way that the end of their life comes, using living wills, a document stating under which medical or what medical circumstances you will or will not want your life to be terminated. This debate about the right to die, quality of life with dignity, is continuing. Now, with technology, we'll continue to relieve some of the physical difficulties associated with aging. The social will doubtless continues to be the real barrier to successful aging. A barrier that the future may well take care of, as older people, by sheer number, will acquire more political power and the social influence that more so than they've ever had in the past. And we'll see what impact that has on what options and how we embrace or accept death and dying. I hope this has been helpful and not too upsetting. I hope you do what you can to sort of get your thoughts around having the conversation with people that you care about death and dying. It shouldn't be so fearful or so mystifying. It's a fact of life. Nobody gets out alive. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you've enjoyed the course on aging, and we'll move on to next week's material next week. Good luck. Bye for now.